Good evening and welcome to this episode of Smart Entrepreneurship Decoded. As an entrepreneur, you're constantly bombarded with statistics. One of the most popular ones is 90% startups fail in the first couple of years. Do you know 90% of the incubators also fail in the first few years? Out of the 10,000 odd incubators in the world, 90% don't make any money. Why do they fail? After all, when you think of incubator, what comes in your mind? The closest parallel is when a baby is born and is weak, is put into a medical incubator with doctors and nurses watching them till they come out healthy. That's what incubators are supposed to do with the ideas of entrepreneurs. But why do they have such a high failure rate? Think about it. If this situation was in a hospital, would you even put your child in such an incubator? What an entrepreneurship ecosystem requires is incubators that bring in the three essential I's. What are these three I's? Innovation, a complete uh, ecosystem of labs, equipment, etc. So that's the first I, innovation. Most incubators don't have it, right? They just have a few computers. It's like having a hospital without an operation theater. The second I is industry. Unless you have industry that is giving you problems to solve for or absorbing and mentoring you, there is no incubation. And finally, the third I is investor. Unless people are willing to back the ideas, there is no entrepreneurship ecosystem. So it is these three I's that make a successful entrepreneurship ecosystem or an incubator. But most incubator owners concentrate on the fourth I, which is infrastructure. They'll set up a beautiful building, throw lots of money at it, and then forget about it. One of the major reasons why they fail is because they put people to run incubation centers who've never done business before. Will you go to a hospital and get yourself operated by a doctor who's never operated before? Will you get into an aeroplane where the pilot has never flown before? Why would you take your company to a place where nobody has done business before? Which brings me to the point of our guest tonight. A highly accomplished individual has seen success in corporate life, entrepreneurship, and then for the last 5 to 7 years has been the founder CEO of what I consider the gold standard of incubator and accelerators in India or anywhere in the world, where all the three I's are in place. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of iCreate, Mr. Anupam Jalote.
Hi,
Welcome, Anupam.
thanks. Thanks for the warm welcome, Nalin. It's very flattering.
No, I had the privilege of visiting the center 3 years ago, and I was very impressed at the thought that had gone behind designing every aspect of it, from the labs to the focus that we are a technology incubator and this is the bare standard we need. Even though at that time you all were also trying to put various elements together, and now I see how it has all come across beautifully. So, to your mind, what is it that you do that makes you different from so many incubators which are just struggling to get people?
Mm. Yeah, it's actually a very good question, Nalin. And as you yourself in your field would have discovered, see, you're an outlier in the investors field and in getting things done, and as an entrepreneur yourself. So you know that very seldom is it something radical or exceptional that needs to be done or actually gets done. It's what you choose to focus on and what you choose not to focus on. Uh, the palette will all be the same for everybody. What I guess worked at iCreate was something as vague as a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we were founded, we were told you should become the IIT IIM for startups. Now we took that to heart and we said, okay, if there is thought leadership called for here, then we can't just do what everybody ends up doing. Now, therefore, we need to think like startups. We need to be fundamentally innovative in our approach. Now, it's easier said than done to be fundamentally innovative in your approach means that your recruitment philosophies for your team can be different, your selection criteria for your projects can be different, the kind of models you choose to engage with mentors and experts can be different, and so can your investment models. Now all of those we tried out. So I would like to say that I create stands on three broad pillars. One is your standard incubator slash accelerator, which to my mind is our R&D lab. It informs us how to improve the business of incubation. So as we incubate, we keep learning. People talk a lot about AI, artificial intelligence, and I figure we have a little bit of RI here, real intelligence, so not just the artificial kind. So if one leg is the incubator, the second is the institution. So the institution is the place where our knowledge repository is. So the startup lifecycle management, how do you actually increase the efficiency of the startup journey from idea to proof of concept, from proof of concept to early market traction, and then beyond? Are there some methodologies that can be adopted? And we figured that there were. So we created some very interesting programs. Uh, One was the seed support, it's now called the seed support acceleration. The other is an idea accelerator. So many times you have people who have ideas and the clarity they want to be an entrepreneur, but little else. And we put them through an idea accelerator that orients them towards true north, which is the customer, the paying customer. So stuff like that, and certification, and how do you end up actually empirically gauging the startup's potential from the tech point of view, from the market point of view, from the entrepreneurial competencies point of view. All of those assessments get taken. And the third piece is putting all of this together into large scale practice. That's strategic innovation. Now, strategic innovation is take a large problem that exists, and the solution needs to be very, very large. And then you bring in the startup life cycle, which is idea to POC, POC to market. So I'll give you an example of a motor project we're doing for electric vehicles. We'd like to be independent of imports from China. So a motor that does not use magnets, is lightweight and low cost and high power, and that motor would then become the world leader. And so by design, it's a multi-thousand crore, multi-billion business by design, but it follows the startup cycle. So when you start thinking like that, I guess then people start getting attracted. But it's still a long journey, Nalin. Very, very long journey yet.
Interesting you say that. So we run a lot of incubation programs in India and Indonesia, and incubator managers are always struggling. Uh, and there are two, three areas they struggle in, and I want to pick your brain on those areas. The first one is, how do you engage with industry? Do
Mhm.
you solve a problem and go to them, or do you ask them what a problem are you facing?
Mm. Both, actually, both work. So one part definitely is going to them with capabilities, that we have capabilities in, let's say, industrial IoT, in helping you with your digitization agenda. We can help you reduce your cost, increase your throughput. So you're going with a basket of potential solutions and then asking them about their problems. That's the first approach. The other is you go with specific solutions, that okay, we've got energy monitoring and usage reduction system, and we have a dashboard and intelligence, and it can be deployed across all your units. So both of them work, but it calls for um expensive resources, because you need to talk to the plant head level, the CXO level, as an equal, from a position of knowing and confidence. uh, Unfortunately, startups themselves lack this maturity and gravitas most of the time in the early stages, and so that burden comes to the
Yeah,
incubator.
it is. You make a very important point. I keep telling the incubator owners that you have packed the place with administrators. What you need
Yeah.
is senior networkers who will
Oh
speak to
yeah.
the government, who will speak to the industry as an equal. That is why you need people with track record like yourself, and I've met your other staff members as well. And
Mm.
that's one of the things you do really well. The second one that I want to pick on is mentoring is a huge part, but I find a lot of incubators uh, just throwing some alumni or somebody who's visiting the city or some midlife burnt out individual in front of the people and say, mentor them. Anybody who they can get for free, preferably. What has been the approach of I Create?
So good mentoring is not free. It's never, never, never free. So since we have a specific technology focus, so we paid money and retained people who are specialists in the technology. So at least on the tech domain, we've got retained people who spend quality time, not on a best effort basis, but because they're compensated for that. And it does not put any additional burden on the startup initially. It's only when they start consuming more than a certain amount of time that they're expected to pay for the time themselves. And then as startups grow, their requirement for expertise becomes very specific. Then the kind of profile that you described, a generic good natured human being who wants to give generic advice, that's useless, because they want doors opened, they want specific prescriptions. Ki, do not do this or please do this, and that only comes from somebody who's been there, done that.
Is
uh,
that is that point where you really think of the company as something that is an axle you're going to accelerate? Is that the stage where you need, because most incubators are confused whether they're an incubator or accelerator. They don't know the difference, uh,
mm,
and they land up leaving all entrepreneurs half pregnant. So is that a place where you see
Lovely.
that
so
acceleration
so
starts?
if we move away from semantics, because sometimes words can get confusing, what is our solemn responsibility? To convert an innovative idea into commercial success.
True.
As we handhold a project across its startup journey, at some point a conviction starts coming inside us that there is a chance that this one can become successful. When you start getting that thought in your mind is the point when you start dedicating and spending serious money on that project. Remember, it's your own investment that you're trying to make more profitable for yourself. We have hopefully taken equity, even if it is small. I mean, we've got 2 to 5% equity stake, but sometimes it pays off beautifully, right? So when that doubt starts entering your mind that this may be one of the projects that can become successful, then we have to spend time and money in curating the success story. At that point, you can't leave it to them. At that point, you cannot be miserly and say that no, we won't spend money on them. That's the time when you need to invest in them.
Interesting. Where you're spot on with your thinking there. I want to take this topic towards another area of your expertise. I know you're a technologist. I know you've done wonders in the energy field, etc. 3 years ago, when I met you, you dissected for me the coming EV boom and what's likely to happen, and it has played out pretty much the way you spoke about it at that time. Right now, what is exciting you in the technology space?
So, thank you. This is like a happy birthday question. So, right now, EV and fintech are two places which are really, really exciting. Both of them are sectors in which there's a lot of potential and a lot of happening, as well as investor interest and market interest. In the EV domain, what iCreate is focusing on is only two and three wheelers. We're not touching four wheelers. And even in two and three wheelers, we are focusing on very specific four subcomponents: the motor and the motor controller, the battery and the battery management system, the kinetic energy recovery system, and the overall vehicle intelligence. And that's it. So we're curating uh, a bunch of innovators, not only from across the country but from across the world.
Okay.
And we've launched a 8 month long challenge called Evangelize, by which we are kind of bringing people together and then taking them through a 3 year journey, in which my solemn target and commitment almost to the Prime Minister is that 4 to 5 world leading manufacturing facilities should be set up in India, and we should have the knowledge with us. And the excitement comes from the fact that today, India being a slightly price conscious market, the demand for two and three wheelers is humongous. And the use cases that are opening up for these very potent three wheelers, I mean, you see the reverse strike with two wheels in front and one wheel behind, and you have the standard three wheeler with one in front and two at the back. And the use cases are staggering. And the replacement market for cargo delivery, for people delivery, for personal transport is huge. So EV is definitely the place to be, but not as a Lego brick player that you import components and you assemble. You'll quickly be priced out of the market. You've got to have some core competence. And in fintech, ah, you're the expert, man. I mean, I'd leave you to fill it in, but we've got this major partnership with Gift City. So international fintechs as well as domestic fintechs, mm, uh, from regulatory tech to insurance tech to banking tech. It's really very, very exciting times.
I remember coming 3 years ago and seeing the first those EV mopeds and bicycles uh, at the campus, and those battery operated robotic the equipment and stuff like that. I'm sure it has progressed a lot from there. When you when you look at the ecosystem, and I hear you say things which normally entrepreneurs will not find fashionable. It's not cool to say, I will take you through a 2 through 3 year journey, right? Only a serious entrepreneur will really appreciate that. Most of them are thinking, I start now and 3 years later I have an IPO. Uh, they don't see the whole build cycle. So I like that is a more practical, and in the real world that's how it plays out. It does take 2 to 3 years to seed ideas and flatten it out. But do you find that both of us belong to a particular era and generation, right, where entrepreneurship was not a career choice? We could say today it has become almost a compulsion with the lack of the job creation. But still, do you find entrepreneurs don't think as much about creating value as they think about valuation?
Sad, but a little bit true. A little bit true. And I call them the page three entrepreneurs also occasionally, in which they get attracted by the glamour of valuation and enhanced sense of self value. Uh, but thankfully, there is the other part also that are very business focused, and they realize that money coming into the bank is a very, very real and a very solid and tangible thing. So perhaps because I create is a bit more product focused, we tend to meet quite a large number of the value focused, not valuation focused also. So while what you're saying is true, but there is a small but really significant number of the other kind also, which is what excites people like you and me and keeps us happy in this space.
One of the pleasures of working with young entrepreneurs is it kind of re-energizes.
Hmm.
For me, it's re-energizing, right? New ideas, fresh people, hungry for success. You also feel learn a lot from them.
Hmm.
So one of the other things that I often notice, and I don't know what your experience is on that, would love to hear your thoughts. There's a lot of IIT IIM focus in our country, or whatever, Premier Institute focus. And it so happens that the investors also tend to come from there, and they form an old boys club. It's a proven fact. In America, 65 to 80% of the VCs come from the Ivy League. So, do they look at entrepreneurs with a certain filter, which puts tier two and tier three town entrepreneurs at a disadvantage for no fault of theirs? Is there a role that I create plays in that area?
Again, very, very nuanced question. And where do you dig these questions up from, Nalin? Do you attend a class? Do you get tutorials? Well, so, but to answer that one, yes, there is a reasonable amount of, uh, let us say, attraction. If you're uh, if you've got international degrees, international work ex, your desirability quotient is higher if you're from IIT, IIMs, or premier institutes. Again, it's higher. And again, you're right, spot on. Incubators like ours, when we support on the merit of the idea. So people, we find a lot of our people coming from tier 2, tier 3, and not a conscious choice at all. We're just filtering through ideas which have a high probability of success. Since we support very, very early stage, uh, we see more determination and a desire to, plug away at it till success comes. And a very shocking revelation has been that some startups that we tend to write off early on, they stick around, and then some magic happens, some chemistry changes in their mind, and 2 3 years down their journey, they get transformed. It's that swan moment or whatever, and they just transform. And so therefore, people who focus only on credentials are, I think, losing out there.
Yeah,
It's a very rich texture to the innovation
true.
ecosystem in India,
Interesting
and
you
that
say
is
that.
what inspires me.
I have noticed in the fund fest we do in India and Indonesia that the entrepreneur who gets laughed off the stage by the investor, he gets funded
Mm,
first outside. He has the
mm,
last laugh. It's very interesting, how these things sometimes play out.
mm.
Let me come to another problem that incubator owners face in both the countries I'm operating in, which is retaining the top talent. There is a person like yourself who is given continuity, and I notice from the newfound aggression of I create in the social media of attracting and socializing and popularizing what you'll do, which is really needed, and I applaud you for that. How do you maintain people? I mean, it's difficult in an aspirational country like India, in a booming sector.
Yeah, and especially more difficult when your chairman is an IS officer. So there are salary caps and stuff. Um, uh, so you have to understand that this is a high turnover industry like most others, and that people will move on, and which is all right. Uh, but if you are able to engage their interest, so it's all about momentum. And since thankfully, very, very luckily, we are able to build up that momentum, it's an exciting journey. And people like being able to see some outcomes to the effort that they're putting in. And
True.
that's what kind of
Yeah.
helps a little bit. But we struggle to get good talent, and we are very much in the market all the time for good talent, and we're still looking for people right now.
Yeah, there
But
is a
sometimes we've got
certain.
some flexible policy
Yeah.
which says that you don't have to be completely based here. You can hybrid your work from wherever you are and where we need you to be, and that flexible thing starts to help a lot.
That's true. At least the pandemic has accelerated that process,
Mm,
and people are more open to it. So I'm coming to wind. Let's wind down with the last question. I want to know: you are sitting in a room and you're hearing pitch after pitch. Okay, uh, must be happening frequently for you. Tell me one thing that makes you perk up and look at the entrepreneur. That in that really, okay, I want to talk to this guy. And one thing that is off-putting for you.
mm. Okay, so two sides of the same coin. What is off-putting is a lot of use of generic words and adjectives, that we're doing this for market access and we're going to leverage the knowledge play and drive a wedge into a fast growth segment, which tells you absolutely nothing. And when there's too much of that jargon, I mean, within the first 2 minutes, I actually switch off and go to sleep. And I'm sure a lot of us do that. And conversely, anybody who's talking real, we did this, it did not work, we tried that, it worked, this is our experience and this is our opinion. The moment people start showing you their world through their eyes, their learnings, their insights, it's a real thing. It's a very real relationship we're trying to get into. So the more real they
Authenticity.
make it, they just hook us completely.
Authenticity.
Yep.
I think authenticity and credibility makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So, for all our viewers, I would highly recommend that if you are an entrepreneur, reach out to iCreate for one of their programs. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, and you want to see how a good incubator accelerator works, reach out and maybe they'll take you for a tour of their facility. It's an absolutely world-class facility. With that, Anupam, I'm very thankful to you for joining us today. Your insights, as usual, are very useful and practical. Thank you very much. Wish you the very best for the future.
Thank you, and very honored that you invited me. Thank you so much, Nalin. Thank you.
Thank you, Anupam. Thank you.
Yeah,
Good
bye.
night.